During the past years, we have been witness to many different democracies fall out of existence. Thus far, the American government has been able to maintain its existence. In order to keep it this way, we are going to discuss 3 different ways to save democracy. The first way to save democracy is to educate the public on what they should look for to distinguish a good candidate from a candidate who may become a future dictator. The public opinion is very influential to the election of a new president. If those who will be voting understand the possible signs of authoritarian behavior, they will be more informed and more likely to make safer choices in regards to the next president. There are 4 main indicators of authoritarian behavior, and these include 1. The rejection of democratic rules. This can be seen if a candidate rejects or asserts that they are willing to break constitutional rules and regulations. It also suggests anti-democratic measures that may restrict civil rights and political rights. They may also hope to use unconstitutional means in order to change the government. One sign of this type of behavior is not agreeing with the electoral votes. The second sign is denying the legitimacy of political opponents. Behavior may include describing the political opponent as a threat to national security or a criminal who is unqualified to participate in the election. When they do this, they will do it without proof, and this can be a cause for concern. They may also assert that their opponents are working with a foreign government, and usually it's a foreign government who is perceived as an enemy. The third sign is the toleration of violence. It can be seen if a candidate has ties with armed gangs and or other organizations that are known for their violence. They may also support the mobbing of their political opponent, will not condemn violence or punish violence, and they will ally themselves with people who also participate in violent acts. And the fourth sign is willingness to silence political opponents. This can be shown through the support of laws and or policies which restrict things like civil liberties, protesting, and speaking out against the government. Another sign is threatening to pursue legal action against critics or the media, also by praising other repressive governments. The education of the public can be helpful and can prevent some future dictators from entering the office. However, many authoritarians may not exhibit this type of behavior until after they are elected into office, so this is a good step to prevent the fall of a democracy. It is not the only step that should be taken. Another step that we can take to prevent the fall of a democracy is to refrain from breaking presidential norms and unwritten rules of the presidency. So some presidential norms, such as things like owning a pet, have little to no effect on the ability to run the country. However, there are many ways that the president can technically, legally move the country into a dictatorship. One example can be Trump's inaugural speech. The speech did not align with the normal light nature that most presidents take when they read such a speech. The speech instead centered on such subjects as American carnage. There are other ways that Trump fails to stick to presidential norms that have some people in fear of a failing democracy. One of these failures to stick to norms is Trump's inability to separate his private from his professional life. For example, Trump appointed his daughter Ivanka and his son-in-law to 2 high-level advisory positions in the White House. And though this is not technically an illegal action, since it's not a spot on the president's cabinet, this still breaks the presidential norms of refraining to hire a family. Another example from Trump can be seen in his questioning of the results of the popular vote of the election. Claims that the vote would be reversed had there not been illegal voters voting are unbacked by any calculations, and this is only one of the false and misleading comments that Trump has made before and during his time in office. The continuation of breaking unwritten rules such as these can actually shift the new norm into a different place, which would make it almost easier to take a jump from a slightly less intense unwritten rule to one that may lead us into a dictatorship. Now, installing the idea that all presidential norms should be followed can help keep the country on track of democracy and show people when it may be failing. However, there are some norms that are better for the public if they are broken, such as stepping out of the limo on the inaugural day parade to show the devotion to the people. It is up to the people of the democracy to recognize when an unwritten rule should or should not be broken, and to realize when the breaking of a rule can be detrimental to the country. The third way to save democracy would be for political parties to not become enemies. When political parties begin to see each other as rivals, they can start to believe that the country is not safe in the hands of the other party. This can cause trouble when each party is willing to do anything to keep the country out of the hands of the other. A good example of how parties can stop a future dictator from taking office is to back the candidate of the other party. For example, if an authoritarian makes it to the final step of the election and is one of the final two candidates for the presidential seat, the people from that candidate's party could show their support for the other candidate and to speak out against their particular candidate. If the public sees the stance behind the better candidate and the opposition behind the other candidate, even within its own party, they may be compelled to place their vote differently to how they would have before. However, as the parties become more and more rivals to each other, they're going to be less willing to back the candidate of another party, even if it means saving democracy, for fear of having the opposing party in office. The parties acting in unison can help to save democracy. However, it seems that the parties are moving in the direction of being rivals more and more with each election. There were a few people who were willing to publicly admit that they had doubts about Donald Trump taking the seat of the president. However, if more high-ranking Republican officials expressed their distaste with him even though he was their party's candidate, then the election could have ended up much differently. In conclusion, we should educate the public to make them more prepared to make the decision of who they would like to vote for the next presidential election. Presidents should refrain from breaking presidential norms, and the public should be the judgment of which presidential norms should be followed or which ones are maybe not that important. And political parties should not become enemies, but rather work together to put the best person in office for the well-being of the United States of America.